I made a humongous mistake recently, a real lapse in judgment. It was an unforgivable mistake, and I'm going to spit it out. I defended EA. I leapt to their defense. I suggested that it wasn't them to blame for the chaos, the death of Dragon Age as a series, and probably BioWare as a developer, which is going to follow soon after. I mean, let's be honest, Mass Effect 5 is never happening. You're coping if you think that's ever going to release. But I said that it was BioWare's own doing, their own responsibility, their own fault, and EA, if anything, were generous. They gave BioWare tons of time, allowed them to make supposedly their dream game, didn't even force live service elements in the game, and then BioWare went ahead and it was basically inmates let loose in the asylum. They produced a politically, ideologically driven self-insert, basically. They called it a game, slapped $60 price tag on it, and that was basically it. EA allowed them to do that, despite their reputation of shutting down studios at every turn, like Westwood, known for Command & Conquer, RTS, strategy games and everything. They used to do this all the time. They'd shut down a studio that looked at them wrong. They were gone. They were killed. They were taken out back. But BioWare were allowed to crack on, basically do anything they wanted, even after the mess of Anthem. So I defended them, but it seems, sadly, things just don't change. You spend half a minute not hating EA and blaming them for everything and suggesting the industry is getting destroyed closer and closer every day because of a company like this. You let them off the hook for just a couple of moments, and then they rear up their head and show their true colors. In fact, I think people have been more in on just hating, understandably, Ubisoft for a while. They've been the punching bag. EA have been able to sort of escape this for a while, but they've made themselves known what they really think, and it kind of just shows, I think, that if you were going to criticize anything to do with EA and the whole Dragon Age Veilguard thing, it was that they were incompetent for not shutting down Veilguard a long, long time ago. And what their CEO has come out and said about the failure of Veilguard just kind of shows they don't know what they're doing whatsoever. They don't know why games succeed, like the Baldur's Gate 3s, the Elden Rings, probably Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it seems to be doing reasonably well. They don't understand why games are a success these days. And they also don't understand why games fail, and fail miserably, fail at kind of Concord levels. I mean, Veilguard didn't sell 7 copies like Concord, but given the status of the franchise and the name and everything, selling probably less than 1 million copies, that almost feels like a Concord failure. It should never have hit those lows. Anthem, which was a nothing. It's not a franchise. No one cared about it. No one was saying anything good about it. There were no good reviews for Anthem like there were the shill ones, the corrupt ones for the Veilguard. That still sold 5 million copies. So the extent that Veilguard failed to cross probably 1 million, it's really bad. It should be cause for a bit of a investigation, really, within EA, which the only logical outcome would have been the shuttering of BioWare, but that would take some real self-reflection, some actual reality for why you're losing these dollars. But instead, EA CEO came out and said, I assume he was speaking to shareholders, he said, Veilguard had a high-quality launch, apparently, and was well-reviewed. But it failed to resonate with gamers who want shared world features. That's why it failed. There was no daily login rewards. There's nothing to spend gems on in this game. What's going on here? That is the mindset of Andrew Wilson, CEO of EA, who I believe architected the success of FIFA, basically. So sure, FIFA makes a lot of money for EA. Most of the industry is jealous. It's another Fortnite. It just constantly prints money with no effort. I don't even think it's called FIFA anymore. What is it? EA Football or whatever. But it prints money, no effort. That's what Andrew Wilson wants. And he thinks that you can apply that FIFA model to basically everything. He doesn't understand that the success he built with FIFA for EA, it's exclusive to FIFA. There are people who play video games and their hobby is to play games. And they might play a few different games, some different single-player games, dabble with some multiplayer. There's those people, gamers, and then there's FIFA players. It's totally different. FIFA players, the majority of them, they don't play other video games. Their gaming box, PS5 or whatever, it's for FIFA and basically nothing else. You can't translate that to any other video game. And that's what this clown has done for years. He stumbled on a genuine success. Good for him. Bad for the game industry, but sure, good for him. And he's just been destroying the rest of the industry basically ever since, trying to recapture that. And that is why so many of EA's games, for a time, they all had to be live service. Every game had to incorporate these elements. It stopped working, really. Finally, some studios within EA, like the Titanfall 2 studio, the Jedi Survivor studio, Respawn, they were allowed to do their own thing. Finally, we were getting some single-player games again. In the case of the Veilguard, we know it went through development hell. What we don't really know for sure is, why was that? Because at one point, Veilguard was definitely a live service. I think then it turned into a single player. It may have even been single player well before then. It went through like 3 different iterations or something like that. Single player, then multiplayer, then single player. Just weird, set up for failure. Who's surprised that it turned out to be a turd? But what we don't know is, did EA force BioWare to shift gears and start making Dragon Age live service, and then change their mind or something down the track, and eventually allow BioWare just to turn this into a single-player game? The whole thing's a mess. Even with Mr. Wilson's comments, I'm not convinced that this is all EA's fault. In fact, I'm just kind of hoping that they haven't drank the Kool-Aid this badly, the live service Kool-Aid. He's just trying to bullshit shareholders, basically. He's speaking to a bunch of investors who are just thinking, why didn't you just make something like Fortnite? That prints money. What the fuck are you guys doing? I hope he's speaking to just people like that who don't care about games. They just want money. They just want the game industry to print more money for them. So he's just telling them what they want to hear, basically. We made a small error, but don't worry, it's going to be live services from here on out. We're going to be printing money. It's going to be fantastic. Hopefully it's just that, because the level of self-awareness, if they actually think that the Veilguard failed because of a lack of live service elements, and maybe something else was at play, maybe it was something else. Maybe just open your eyes, take a look at the game, look at the clowns who were making it, who were wasting your money, burning it, flushing it down the toilet. Maybe just have a look at that. So surely he's not that clueless. But you never know with EA, given their track record, their decision-making, and everything there. He mentions in this call or whatever, Q3 was not the financial performance we wanted or expected. You cannot think that the Veilguard was going to shift any units, seeing the state of it. And the thing is, even if you remove and forget about all the DEI stuff, which is hard given the level of propaganda in the game, but if you just try and ignore it, the game's just a total mess anyway, because you cannot turn what was once a live service and just convert it into a single-player game and think that's going to be fun. They're just so different. I mentioned the whole FIFA versus gamer thing. It's kind of live service versus gamer in a way, because live service games and the feeling that you get playing them, the reason that you play a live service, it is just so fundamentally different from the reason you would play a single-player RPG where you're taking in the writing, the content in the game, the quests, and you're getting to know the characters, you're making choices and all that. None of that, really, not in the same way at least, is in a live service game. You're just chasing dopamine hits around the map in most live service games. It's a totally different experience. You play these for different reasons. So, trying to make a live service Dragon Age, and then, oh no, we're going to do a 180, make it a single-player game, it's always going to be a recipe for disaster. It's a total fail. And it may just be that EA said, you know what, these idiots are never going to be capable of making anything good anyway. Let's not allow them to start from scratch and make a decent RPG. They're not capable of it. We'll just get them to try and make something out of nothing, a silk purse out of a pig's ear, that old saying. And EA just kind of knew this whole thing was going to be a clown fest anyway. The game was going to suck. The people at BioWare, they were just going to self-insert, turn this whole thing into a big propaganda machine. And EA thought, whatever, I mean, who cares? Like, we're going to lose money anyway, so let's just do it. Maybe then we've got a good excuse to close BioWare, and we don't look like we're just changing our tune, changing our mind. Because again, they should have closed BioWare after Anthem, but then they allowed them to stay open for like 4, 5, 6 years. So they probably thought, well, let's just get them to release something so it doesn't look like we totally wasted years and changed our minds later about closing the studio. At least we've now got a very good reason. Veilguard didn't even crack 1 million copies sold, most likely. So, pretty ridiculous. You hope Andrew Wilson is just lying through his teeth, which would be the best outcome, honestly. I hope he's lying. I hope he's just bullshitting people. We'll end very quickly on this, because there's a rumor doing the rounds. Baldur's Gate 4 to be developed by Dragon Age Veilguard game director Corinne Bush at Wizards of the Coast Skeleton Key Studio. Sometimes you get good news, you get a flurry of good news. BioWare failing, layoffs, it's all going wrong for them. Veilguard Copa's in shambles. It's all looking good, but sadly, the good times can't last, and we see that here. It all kind of comes around, because we've got Baldur's Gate 4, directed by idiot who ruined Dragon Age, destroyed the entire franchise. We talk about self-insert. This person is the real-life version of every second video game protagonist of the last 3 or 4 years. It seems like things might change now, that the craziness might be lessened at least. It won't be as bad as it has been, but Baldur's Gate 4, not looking good. And this is what happens when you get someone who owns a franchise that's beloved. So Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, same thing basically. You've probably heard of one of them. They own Baldur's Gate, and they just hired out Larian to work on the game. They did basically nothing to assist. I think they might have had some D&D consultants involved, but other than that, basically useless. They just got free money because of Larian's incredible work, from Larian actually having talent. And now, because Larian don't want to work on another Baldur's Gate, they've created their own studio, Skeleton Key Studio, and they're working on Baldur's Gate 4. Again, this is a rumor, but it's sounding true. The studio definitely exists. Does Corinne Bush actually work there in a senior role? We will find out. But the sad thing is, because Wizards of the Coast are just so incompetent and just so useless, there's so many stories with like Magic the Gathering, and obviously their handling of D&D video games over the years as well. They got lucky with Baldur's Gate 3. Now it's up to them to try and figure out a follow-up, create their own studio, get things happening. They've made potentially the most fatal mistake possible. You hire this person who should never work in video games again. I'll settle for RPGs. This person was working on The Sims before all this. Go back to that. Go and make Life Sim at friggin' Paradox or something, who are ruining Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Go and bother them and infect them with your rubbish. And the thing is, I should look at the positives here, because if this rumor turns out to be true, Corinne Bush is working at this studio, the positive is I won't be conflicted anymore, because you just kind of know, no matter who works on a Baldur's Gate 4, it's not going to be as good as what Larian are doing. It's going to be some cheap imitation. They're probably going to get most of it wrong. It's going to be a bit of a mess. That's just the reality. It's never going to live up to expectations. But I think most people, just because of the RPG that was Baldur's Gate 3 and having such a good time, all the good content, hundreds of hours and so on, people would still just have an eye on a Baldur's Gate 4 and just kind of hope, bit of that hopium, that it might just somehow live up to expectations. But if they've hired Corinne Bush, we don't have to do that anymore. We know for certain it's going to be absolutely abysmal. If you had concerns about, like, oh, Baldur's Gate 3, it was a good game, a little bit woke though, it was a bit too woke, you can almost just throw that all out the window with the Baldur's Gate 4. It's going to be over the cliff at that point. There's going to be nothing redeeming about it. And this will basically put that stamp on it. So I'm sure we'll find out very soon if this is true. These sorts of loons can never stay quiet on social media for too long. Even if they say, oh, I'm boycotting or whatever, they're back to social media looking for Reddit upvotes or Twitter likes within about 6 minutes. So I'm sure we'll find out. It also said in this article that Wizards of the Coast apparently were keeping this news quiet because they were worried about the blowback, the negative feedback. Maybe this should clue you into something. Do not hire this person. What are you doing? At least they're letting us know in advance what to expect with this game. Clown Show, it wasn't enough that Dragon Age is dead. Now you're going to drag Baldur's Gate 4 down with it. Great work, games industry. And we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.